1937, 2 years before this war started, we dug supplementary supplies into the sands of Egypt. A number of depots. Under your very noses. Thousands and thousands of gallons of petrol, water, ammunition, spare parts for our tanks. Waiting for us.
Under our very noses, eh?
So here it's June 1942, and a battered British army, retreating from the Desert Fox himself, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, leaves a lone survivor on the Egyptian border, Corporal John Bramble. Bramble stumbles, literally as we'll see, into a remote desert hotel that, unbeknownst to him, is about to become a German HQ. Now, in order to survive, Bramble pinches the identity of a recently deceased waiter, and as this waiter was a German spy, and the hotel will soon host Rommel himself, can Bramble play the game long enough to survive, and can he unlock Rommel's secret strategy, codenamed Five Graves, and prevent the Germans blasting the British out of Egypt? Let's take a look. So Five Graves to Cairo is a film it took me a couple of viewings to really appreciate. Posters and taglines for the film may have you believe it's an out-and-out war movie, a British versus Rommel actioner set out in the desert. And it is in its own way, but in all honesty it has more of an Agatha Christie vibe to it than anything else. The vast majority of its plot unfolds indoors, taking place in the Empress of Britain Hotel in Sidi Hafaya. And I'll talk about why I feel that works in the film's favour in a moment or two. Here we have Franchot playing John Bramble, the sole survivor of his tank crew who, after wandering delirious through the desert, brilliantly comes across the half-bombed out hotel. Now, no sooner does he get there, the German army also arrives to set up a base of operations, and like I mentioned, he quickly assumes the identity of a dead waiter in order to survive. But this paints him into a corner as said waiter ends up being a German spy. However, this does offer him an opportunity to stay close to the German forces, posing as the waiter, and when Field Marshal Rommel turns up, his thoughts turn to assassination. So Five Graves to Cairo was only director Billy Wilder's third film. And his filmography takes such a mind-boggling upward curve from here. Double Indemnity, The Lost Weekend, Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, The Apartment, staggering stuff really. And with a filmography like that, films like this can get a little lost. Now this film sees Wilder building the foundations of his astonishing career, adding suspense, humour and a bit of romance into the mix. The film feels brilliantly confined and cramped. It's all shadowy corners and candlelit hotel rooms. And joining Tone in his scheming, Akim Tamiroff as the hotel owner Farid, and Anne Baxter doing a decent French accent as the maid Mouche. A lady who has her own personal agenda regarding her Nazi guests and her allegiance to Bramble drift back and forth as the story unfolds.
Yes. I had two brothers in the French army. At Dunkirk, when the British decided to evacuate their troops, what did they do with the French? They left them on the beaches to die or to be captured.
Who told you that, Laval?
Wading out into the water, begging the boats to come back for them. But did the British come back? Did they?
So as I mentioned, it did take me a couple of viewings, admittedly, to realise this wasn't going to be an out-and-out action flick, but a wartime spy noir thriller. And if you view it under that light, it does work so much better. I'm a big fan of how claustrophobic it feels. It does feel like the characters are literally in the hornet's nest with nowhere feeling safe. Even huddled away in their servants' quarters, it feels like they have to whisper to one another. Now, of course, Wilder's ace card here is in the casting of film legend Erich von Stroheim as Rommel. He's got such a presence on screen that he overshadows the movie. He also appears as the star on most posters, etc. And the film doesn't present him as a villainous maniac, but a proud officer. He's as tough as he is intelligent, and even dines and converses with the British officers that he's captured.
Gentlemen, I understand that not long ago, when the question came up in the British Parliament as to who should be entrusted with the supreme command of the Allied forces in Africa, some members suggested my name.
That's quite possible, Field Marshal. The British sense of humour is unpredictable, you know.
Humor, my dear Colonel Fitzhume, is founded on truth. But who are we to argue with the British Parliament?
You're fast becoming a legendary figure.
The way he barks at Anne Baxter after being served breakfast in bed still cracks me up.
Sugar, Your Excellency.
I don't like women in the morning. Go away. You understand English?
Now, apparently Wilder wanted Cary Grant for the role of Bramble, and to be honest, Franchot tone is the weakest bit of casting in the movie. His British accent gets a bit loose on occasions, and I'd argue it's not really his movie anyway. It's first and foremost the Admiral Rommel show, and to be honest, Anne Baxter's battle to get her brother out of a concentration camp, along with her involvement in the bittersweet final act, has more depth and tone getting swept up in Rommel's desert plans. Now, as is common in many Wilder films, comedy plays a big part in the proceedings. I mean, it's not a comedy, but Wilder almost managed to find the absurd in serious situations. Akim Tamiroff has the comedy sidekick role, I suppose, as the hotel owner, constantly at his wit's end with all the double-crossing and shenanigans going on around him.
Farid, for once in my life, I wish the RAF would turn tail and go to the devil.
Yes, sir. Is the cellar shaking?
Not yet.
Oh, then it must be me.
Some candles for the field marshal.
Oh, yes, sir. Right away, sir. Let me load them. Let me lead them.
But I can't not mention Fortunio Bonanova as an Italian general who's always breaking out in song, despite being constantly undermined by Rommel. It's probably an uncomfortable Italian caricature these days, but it works well for the film.
What do you come with?
A request.
What request?
A request that the general cease singing.
Who made such a request?
The gentleman of the German staff.
Now, Five Grays to Cairo is essentially a remake of the 1927 silent film Hotel Imperial, which itself was adapted from a 1917 Hungarian stage play. Here the Russian army is now the German war machine, and Rommel's Africa Corps. It was nominated for a few Oscars, mostly technical ones, as a little film named Casablanca scooped Best Film and Director that year. It's amazing to think that this was a film made only a year after some of its depicted events actually took place. Credit to how quickly great movies were assembled back then. Now, inevitably and unfortunately, it does mean that it ends up as an out-and-out piece of propaganda in its third act, with an on-the-nose, let's send the audience out waving flags feeling that sits awkwardly with the heartbreak and sacrifice on screen. Go check it out.
We're after them now. When you feel the earth shake, it'll be our tanks and our guns and our lorries. Thousands and thousands of them. British, French, and American. We're after them now, coming from all sides. We're going to blast the blazes out of them.